here in the Dorn Mill Complex in the cotton gin with Mr. Britt of Britt Farms. And you were telling me about the evolution of cotton, that it's over 5,000 years old.
Yes, over 5,000 years BC, cotton was in existence and being used in Egypt. And but it was very, very difficult for them to separate the seed from the fiber. So it was very expensive, even in those times. But they did it by hand. And then the spinning wheel come along, and they started learning how to spin the cotton fiber and make cloth. I'll make threads to make cloth. Okay, then the British came to America when they started settling here, and they brought cotton seed, and they started growing cotton. Again, it was a slow process, but they also used the seed. The seed was used for making oil as well as to feed animals. And also this building here that we're sitting in was a oil mill where they extracted the oil from the cotton seed. Okay. And later this building was converted to a grist mill, making flour for corn. A grist mill is a stone machine that grinds the corn and converts it to flour.
So it just squishes it until it's a powder.
It's just powdered, converted to powder, and then they separate the husk from the powder, and that gives you the flour. Okay, and then some of it is converted to real coarse flour instead of thick, fine flour, and that is what they use for grits. This area here is after Eli Whitney invented the gin, this area became a real cotton center. In fact, this area is in the center of the beginning of the revolutionary production of cotton. Right here in this general vicinity is a central of where cotton really got going, especially since Eli Whitney invented the gin in Washington, Georgia, which is only 32 miles from here.
And I never knew that. Now, so that people who are following us on this journey will know, we are about an hour and a half from Columbia. We're about 45 minutes north of Augusta, Georgia. We're in McCormick County, South Carolina, but the Georgia state line is only 13 miles from here. So people freely went back and forth, and we're close to Abbeville County in the town of Abbeville, which is the seat of the Confederacy, not far from here. So cotton was important, but you're talking around the 1600s when the British came and brought cotton. Then Eli Whitney, you said, invented the cotton gin in the 1700s.
1794.
And so then that brings us into the 1800s that most people think about cotton.
The major production of cotton was done by the African slaves. That most of these plantation owners here had slaves. Okay, after the Revolution, after the war between the states, the slaves were freed, and they remained here. Many of them did. They had nowhere else to go, and they were actually happy. They were not mistreated, not that I know of. May have been a few, but not many. So they remained here, and they became what you call sharecroppers. Instead of just being slaves working for the plantation owner, they were called sharecroppers. That meant that if they worked on that farm and they produced, I said they worked on 10 acres of cotton and produced 5 bales of cotton, which was about what we do, the production then. That was their livelihood for the year.
Okay.
Let's say.
And that supported their family?
It supported the entire family.
And the whole community?
Right, but that was their income.
Okay.
I mean, they lived out, they had a garden, and they had maybe a cow and a hog, a few hogs, but the cotton was their main money crop.
Okay.
Money crop for the shareholders,
Sharecroppers.
sharecroppers, as well as for the plantation owner. The cotton was probably about 50 cents a pound, so 50 cents a pound times 500 pounds would be what, $250? Times, let's say 10 acres, $2,500 was a pretty good size, a little bit of money, and it all come in the fall. So they didn't have any money otherwise, so the landowner who was letting them live on the farm, he would loan them money, and that's why they call it sharing. So he would feed them and give them supplies and commodities until they sold the crop, and then they split the cost of the return of the sale of the cotton for. He split the profit, which was half and half.
Right, and so that brings us to this building, because this is where they would bring the cotton after it had been picked.
That's right.
So we've heard that cotton would be sown, the seeds put in the ground, then it would be hoed, that's removing the weeds from around the cotton plants. Then they said it would be chopped. Is chopping next?
Well, they hoe it and chop it is the same thing.
Aha, thank you.
You had to get rid of the grass and the weeds and things, and thin the cotton out to the plants are about 6 inches apart, maybe 6 or 7 inches apart, and that's where the sharecroppers' family worked out in the field.
Okay, and so then, after it matured, we heard that they had different size bowls of cotton, which is a flower shape, and that they had to put the hand in and extract, which you're calling the lint, or the fuzzy white part we see on the cotton?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Go ahead and tell me.
You planted the cotton, and it come up, and you planted it along about April or May, and it grew till the cotton would grow to be 3 or 4 foot tall, and it would bloom. And when it bloomed, then it would be a real beautiful little yellow flower, okay? And that, as soon as it bloomed, those blooms turned into seed bowls, called bowls, B-O-L-L-S, okay? And that's, inside that bowl was where the new cotton seed and lint was produced. That was a seed. Actually, the bowl was a bowl of cotton was the container for the seed, and the seed was surrounded by the lint.
The white fuzzy part.
Now, as soon as that matured and opened, it'd be 4 or 5 locks of cotton per bowl, and that is where the laborers, the family, would pick the cotton from the bowl, not from the blossom, but from the bowl. And here is a bowl.
Right.
Now this bowl of cotton was closed up until it matured, and it opened up. And see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. That had 4. Some of them have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So the cotton was in between each of those.
That's right.
Got it.
And here is the cotton.
Yes.
And here is the seed right there. The seed's inside this lint.
Yeah, I can feel it.
And that's what they was having trouble getting this lint away from the seed.
Right. And I can see, because I can't even, oh, okay, got one.
Here is a replica of a bale of cotton. This is what I refer to as being a 500-pound bale. And by the way, once it comes out of the gin, they weigh it, put a tag on it, and a number. It's also graded. And once that tag is put on it, that number, it becomes a U.S. government commodity. It has a serial, like a serial number. It is just like oil and
really a social security number, and it follows the cotton everywhere it goes.
That number follows that cotton bale of hay until it is consumed. Stack them up outside in the yard. The gin house, they've got a number on them. They ship them, they got a number. When it comes to the mill where they convert it into cloth, it's still got that number on it. They can go back and tell where that cotton came from.
Wow.
Well, if somebody steals it, they know where it come from.
We have wills, and in it, they willed so many hundreds of bales of cotton, so many bushels of corn and different things to the heirs when the landholder died. And one of the wills with my family, they gave the proceeds from the sale of the cotton to former slaves who were now living free. And that's what makes it unusual, because you had said that they used slaves, but the slaves stayed behind here and worked on the farms where they had been enslaved. My wills show they were given warm and comfortable clothes, good and wholesome, nourishing food, and they could keep the proceeds of their labor for their own benefit all the days of their lives.
Exactly. I'm a member of Buffalo Baptist Church, and Buffalo Baptist Church was formed before this nation was formed, 1775. And there are at least 100 slave members of Buffalo Baptist Church.
Now, did you all also have the one-room schoolhouse?
My mother taught school in a one-room schoolhouse in this county for years. There is a replica of it. It's not the same schoolhouse that she was in, but there's one in Troy.
So now you all, did you go to school?
Yeah, I went to school.
Okay, I'm just checking because some people didn't get to go to school. They had to work on the farm in the fields.
Okay.
Yeah.
At noontime, if they would let the farm, especially the boys, go home working the crops.
Right.
Especially cotton.
Yes, sir.
Because it was time to harvest that cotton.
And I know some people were not allowed to go to school during the harvest time. They left school and had to return home and bring in the crops.
Well, sometimes they didn't even start school until late.
That's right.
Late, and 1st of November.
Right.
They started late because they needed all the kids to be picking cotton. Oftentimes right here in McCormick and any other town like this, in the fall, the citizens in town would go out to the farm and help pick cotton. Now you work all day picking cotton, and if you could pick 300 pounds a day, you were lucky. And you made about 10 cents a pound. Didn't even make that much picking it. But you make about $3 or $4 a day picking cotton. Okay, now, when I was growing up here, I've seen in this right here where we're sitting, I've seen it where the entire area was covered with wagons loaded with cotton coming to the gin. They'd get up and bring the cotton in here at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to get in line, and they would gin cotton all day and sometimes all night. There were 2 gins here, not one, but 2, right? One was across the street from this gin here. And there was probably about at least 8 or 10 gins within McCormick County. And McCormick is a small county.
I know I heard there was one in Mount Carmel. I know there was one down maybe Plum Branch or Clarks Hill. But
yes,
that's what they said. They were all packed, that there'd be miles of people, I mean, all the way down Main Street going both ways in wagons with mules and a couple of trucks.
That's correct.
And they said the sidewalks in downtown McCormick would be so full from 7 in the morning to 10 at night, people would just have to kind of push their way through.
There was a lot of population here. Of course, when they had a little bit of money, then they'd spend a little. They'd go downtown and spend it. I walked down through McCormick and I had to walk like this to keep people from running over me at 10 o'clock at night.
That's what they were telling me. And
I worked in the grocery store here, right across the street over here.
And what was it called?
Talbot's Grocery.
Okay.
Okay, I worked for 10 cents an hour. I worked, made I made $1.20 a day, 12 hours.
Yeah. And that was good money.
Oh yeah, $1 would, you could take, my daddy would take $3 to town for on Saturday, and he'd come home with all the necessary supplies. Now we didn't need he didn't buy any food. He bought salt and sugar and
meal maybe, and
we made our own meal.
okay.
We had a grist mill.
So what about the meat?
We grew our own meat.
Okay, because
we didn't eat anything but the various, like seasoning,
sugar,
salt, and that type stuff.
Oh, maybe. Well, I guess you got the lard from the animals.
We had our own lard.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, and then you had gardens, so you grew everything else.
That's right.
So we just had to get the
So
staples.
$3 would take care of the, and they'd bring a quart of ice cream home.
So you all were rich.
A quart of ice cream was about 10 cents.
Right.
Now we had a grist mill, and we would not only would we make grits and cornmeal, but we also cracked the corn so that the guys that were making liquor had
Lots of mash.
a lot of mash. And my daddy, he never got any money for grinding corn or making grits or buck. He just always got a toll, a T-O-L-L, toll.
A toll.
Just like pay a toll to go through a bridge.
Right.
Toll. He got 1/8. And we would take the white corn and we'd put it in one bin.
Okay.
And that was for grits
Right.
and flour. And then the yellow corn was put in another bin, and that was for the animals, the horses and mules and cows. Now let me deviate just a minute.
Okay.
After I finished Clemson University in 1955, I went to work with a John Deere dealer, and I became a John Deere dealer, and I specialized in introducing the cotton picker. We're talking about cotton picking, all this cotton
Yes.
by hand.
Right.
Well, I helped introduce and revolutionize the introduction of cotton machines to pick cotton. And you remember I said with the cotton, the gin would do the work of 60 men. Well, the cotton picker that would pick the cotton, the machine, would do the work of about 50 men per day.
Wow.
And we'd
And no sore hands, no back-breaking work.
Nope, just cotton. The machine had a spindle on it and a bob, and it would go in here and catch this cotton and roll it around, and then it would be doffed
Okay.
off of the spindle, and the spindle would come back around clean again. But we could do that and do the work of about 45 or 50 men per day.
You know, I've seen that word doffed, but nobody could tell me what it meant.
Doffing
Yes.
means remove.
Right, to remove and to wrap it around.
See, it was this way, so they'd doff it the other way.
Okay.
Okay, that machine, one of the first ones I sold was a 2-row, and it sold for $16,000 in 1962. A cotton picker today, a John Deere cotton picker today, is about close to $1.5 million.
Okay, so then we have to ask the question, how profitable or what is the amount of the cotton crop you get a year to need a machine that costs?
Do what now?
How much money, when all the cotton was processed and sold at the end of the year, your cotton crop, how much money would it yield?
Okay, back during the early times that we've been talking about, it would sell for about 50 cents a pound, so a bale of cotton was $250. Today, cotton is about I looked at it this morning's paper. It's about 75 or 80 cents a pound. And it's still a 500-pound bale. So you can figure that out to be how much it is per bale. Okay, but the production of cotton back old times with the sharecropper days was about a half a bale per acre, maybe a bale. But
Actually met a man who could do a
today,
bale.
now they're making 3 and sometimes 4 bales per acre. So, you know, say, let's just use 3. It'd be a 500-pound bale times 75 cents times 3.
So, did you go to college for agriculture?
I went to college and studied agricultural engineering, and that meant that I learned to apply engineering to the needs of agriculture, machinery, and then else planters and whatever, and also for rural electrification and soil conservation and irrigation, and anything that related to agriculture is what I did. But also I followed, what I went to school for is exactly what I ended up doing in my career.
We thank you for sharing this time with us, and thank you, sir, for coming and sharing with us about the cotton.
Thank you.